Hospitals are meant to be sanctuaries of healing, places where families gather to pray for miracles. They are environments where dedicated nurses work tirelessly to save lives and restore health to the sick. But for 16 long years, one man moved through these corridors with a secret darker than any could imagine. His name was Charles Cullen, a figure who would eventually be unmasked as a prolific serial killer. Born in New Jersey in 1960, his early life was defined by deep isolation and significant personal trauma. He struggled with depression throughout his youth, yet he eventually sought a path toward professional caregiving. He chose to become a nurse, a role that demanded compassion, patience, and a steady hand in crisis. Patients viewed him as a trusted caregiver, while his coworkers saw him as a reliable and quiet professional. Hospital administrators repeatedly hired him, unaware that they were inviting a predator into their medical facilities. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, Cullen worked at various hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. To those around him, he appeared to be a dedicated employee who kept his head down and worked hard. But behind the closed doors of patient rooms, a horrifying and calculated pattern was beginning to take shape. Patients who were clearly on the road to recovery would suddenly take a turn for the worse. Others suffered from mysterious and unexplainable medical emergencies that left the attending doctors completely baffled. Families were left devastated by these sudden losses, unable to comprehend why their loved ones had passed. The deaths seemed random and disconnected, making it nearly impossible for staff to identify a common thread. Because these tragedies appeared invisible, Cullen was able to continue his work without raising any alarms. This ability to operate in plain sight was the primary reason he evaded detection for so many years. Investigators eventually uncovered the chilling truth. Cullen was secretly administering lethal doses of medications. He specifically targeted patients with substances like insulin and digoxin to induce fatal medical crises. Many of his victims were not terminally ill, but were actually expected to be discharged home soon. Then, in a matter of moments, these patients were gone, leaving behind only questions and profound grief. As suspicions began to grow among the staff, hospitals often chose the path of least resistance. Rather than launching a full investigation, they simply fired him to avoid the risk of bad publicity. Crucially, these institutions failed to warn the next hospital about his dangerous and erratic behavior. Fearing potential lawsuits, administrators allowed him to resign and move on to his next nursing position. This systemic failure allowed him to continue targeting vulnerable patients in new medical environments. The cycle continued from one hospital to the next, patient after patient, year after agonizing year. Then, the situation finally changed when he encountered a nurse named Amy Loughran. Amy worked alongside Cullen and considered him a close friend, trusting him with her personal confidences. They spent long, grueling nights working difficult shifts together, building a bond of professional camaraderie. But when investigators approached her with disturbing questions, she was caught between friendship and the truth. The evidence against Cullen was mounting, and the trail of bodies pointed directly to her colleague. Amy found herself in a position where she had to choose between loyalty and justice for the victims. At great personal risk, she agreed to assist the detectives in their efforts to stop the killings. She wore a wire, allowing investigators to listen in as she engaged Cullen in sensitive conversations. She carefully navigated these interactions, working to gain his trust while the police recorded every word. The tension during these moments was immense, as Amy knew exactly what kind of man she was facing. Eventually, the pressure and the evidence became too much for Cullen to hide any longer. He finally confessed, admitting to his responsibility for a series of horrific murders. Investigators believe the true number of his victims may never be fully known, despite his partial confessions. In 2003, after years of evading the law, Charles Cullen was finally placed under arrest. The long reign of terror that had haunted so many families was finally brought to an end. Families were finally given the answers they had been searching for through years of uncertainty. Hospitals were forced to confront the uncomfortable reality of how their policies had enabled a killer. America learned that one of its deadliest serial killers had not been stalking dark alleys. Instead, he had been hiding in plain sight, wearing the scrubs of a trusted medical professional. This true story later inspired the 2022 crime thriller film titled The Good Nurse. The movie features powerful performances by Eddie Redmayne as Cullen and Jessica Chastain as Amy. Based on the book by Charles Graeber, the film highlights the friendship that led to his downfall. The movie is currently available to stream on Netflix for those interested in the case. Netflix also released a companion documentary, Capturing the Killer Nurse, to provide further context. The documentary features interviews with the real investigators and Amy Laughran herself. Today, Charles Cullen remains behind bars, serving multiple life sentences for his crimes. Yet, even after all the investigations, one haunting mystery continues to linger over the case. No explanation has fully accounted for the darkness that hid behind his calm, professional smile. For 16 years, families entered hospitals hoping for healing and a return to normal life. Instead, some unknowingly crossed paths with a predator who turned their care into a trap. It remains a chilling reminder of the fragility of trust in our most vulnerable moments. Charles Cullen was the nurse who was supposed to save lives, but became a symbol of betrayal.